In the region of Argolia, two brothers were fighting over the inheritance left by the late king of Argos. Acrisius won the brotherly contest and became the new king of Argos. His brother, known as Perseus, left for exile. As king, Acrisius didn't produce a male offspring to succeed him, and only conceived the beautiful princess Danae. Unhappy, he went to the oracle, who told him the dreadful news that he would never have a male child. His grandson, soon to be born, would be responsible for his death. After checking in with the oracle, Acrisius fell into paranoia and spotted enemies everywhere. The king did not allow any man to approach his daughter to prevent the terrible prophecy from happening. The monarch's paranoia kept increasing, and he ended up locking his daughter in a tower of his palace. The princess started to struggle with loneliness while jailed in a windowless cell. She desperately prayed to the gods. Zeus, from the heights of Olympus, heard the cry of the beautiful princess Danae. The supreme god was captivated by the feeble mortal creature and decided to visit her. Danae often stood under the skylight in her cell, through which the sunlight came in. Suddenly, a golden drop hit her face. A rain of gold literally fell upon the maiden. This downpour was no one but the supreme god himself, who opted for this unusual method to couple with the young girl. Hit by news of his grandson's birth, King Acrisius was enraged. He suspected that his brother Perseus had impregnated his daughter to claim the throne in the future. The unhinged king decided to punish his daughter's supposed treachery. He put the princess and her baby in an ark and threw them into the sea, hoping that the ocean would put an end to their lives. The ark floated on the waters for days, while Danae awaited for their end. But this was not the fate established by the gods. At Zeus's request, Poseidon led the urn to Seriphos, where Perseus and his mother were rescued by Dictys, a fisherman brother of King Polydectes. The humble fisherman sheltered the new mother and raised Perseus as if he were his son. The boy grew up to be a stunning, strong, and brave man. There was a party in the palace one day. Dictys and his protégés were invited. The king was marveled by Danae, but noticed that she was always shielded by her jealous son. Then came the moment when gifts were offered to the king. The guests brought him jewelry and fine fabrics. Perseus, who was just a fisherman like his raising father, and had nothing of much value to offer. "I'm not rich, therefore I have no jewelry or anything precious as a gift, but I would like to offer you the head of the monstrous Medusa, if that pleases you." The king realized that it was the perfect opportunity to get Perseus away from his mother. "If what you say is true, then go after that lousy creature, and don't come back without bringing its head as a trophy." Being the son of Zeus, Perseus was always aware that a great power lied within himself, and that he was destined to accomplish great things. The hero stood firm and accepted the challenge. Perseus fearlessly set out to meet his destiny. Perseus embarked on an adventure to find and kill the dreadful Gorgon, known as Medusa. The hero walked through Greece looking for clues to the creature's location, but found nothing. However, the gods liked Perseus, and his quest was boosted by the heavens. Hermes, the messenger god, gave the young man precious advice. The gods stated that the young man's courage and skill alone would not be enough to defeat the Gorgon. He would need special equipment to accomplish his mission. These items were under the guardianship of the northern nymphs, but their whereabouts were known only to the Graeae, the Grey Witches. Hermes, a connoisseur of every possible route, guided Perseus to the cave where the Graeae were hiding. Before he left, the god presented the hero with a divine sword made in Hephaestus's forges. The blade never lost its edge, it was a remarkable weapon. Perseus entered the Graeae's hiding place. The cave was dark, lit only by a few candles. Perseus spotted the old gray witches at the bottom of the cave. There were 3 of them, but they shared only one eye. Perseus knew he had to get the whereabouts of the northern nymphs from those witches, but threatening them with violence would be pointless, since the 3 old women were immortal. But the cunning Perseus spotted an opportunity, and he sneaked up behind the Graeae. Just as one of them was about to pass the eye to the other, Perseus stole it from their hands. The Graeae were desperate and demanded that Perseus return the eye, but he said he would only do it if they would reveal to him where the nymphs were hiding. Otherwise, they would spend eternity in darkness. With no alternative left, the old witches accepted his proposal, and Perseus gave them back the much-treasured eye. Perseus visited the idyllic country of the Hyperboreans, the land where the sun never set, where the nymphs of the north lived. They were already expecting the hero's arrival and welcomed him with the proper hospitality that the offspring of Zeus deserved. The beautiful maidens presented him with the items necessary for Perseus to fulfill his mission. The nymphs shod the young man with winged sandals similar to Hermes. They handed him the sacred helmet given to them by Hades, which gave him the power of invisibility. And finally, he was given a bag made with special threads to hold his precious trophy. Perseus would also receive the most illustrious visit of all. The splendorous goddess Athena, half-sister of the hero and Zeus's favorite daughter, provided him with a great help. She offered her brother her beautiful shield, the sacred Aegeus that had once belonged to Zeus. Now fully equipped, Perseus set out for his encounter with the monster. Upon reaching the creature's hideout, several petrified warriors were at the entrance. Much to Perseus's surprise, 2 other Gorgons were sleeping near the lair's entrance. These were Cethano and Uriel, Medusa's sisters. Perseus made use of Hades' helmet, and he got past the guardians without being seen. Medusa, the dreadful and cursed Gorgon, felt the presence of an invader. She knew something was wrong, but couldn't perceive what. Perseus knew that under no circumstances could he face the creature, otherwise he would become another statue for Medusa's long collection. Perseus cautiously moved forward, with his eyes closed. He tried to use as a guide the sound of the snakes hissing in Medusa's hair, but the hero accidentally kicked a rock, and the noise revealed his position. Medusa fired one of her powerful arrows at Perseus and hit his helmet, knocking it off. Perseus was an easy target for Medusa, who fired another arrow. Relying on his amazing reflexes, Perseus blocked it with his shield. That was when he saw his own reflection in the shield's interior, and, as if he had been touched by Athena's wisdom, Perseus conceived a new strategy to fight the monster. He ran and took cover behind the nearest pillar. Using the shield's reflection, he could see the creature getting nearer him from behind. Perseus remained calm and waited until the creature was exactly where he wanted it to be. With a perfect spin, Perseus managed to strike a blow right through Medusa's neck, separating head and body. The creature was dead, and Perseus accomplished a seemingly impossible quest. The hero kept the Gorgon's head in the special bag he had received from the nymphs. But, to the young man's surprise, the blood dripping from the Gorgon's body gave rise to 2 creatures: Chrysaor, the giant with the golden sword, and a beautiful winged horse. They were the offspring of the relationship between Poseidon and Medusa. Making use of his winged sandals, Perseus took off and started his way home. But on his way, he would still have to deal with unexpected events. Perseus defeated the terrible creature known as Medusa and returned home with the monster's head as a trophy. While he was flying over North Africa, he encountered the mighty Titan Atlas. The Titan had been punished by Zeus to hold up the heavenly vault for having opposed the Olympian gods during the Titanomachy, the great war between gods and titans. Perseus stood before Atlas and asked him for shelter in his land. He said he was tired, as he had completed the arduous task of defeating Medusa. Atlas doubted that Perseus was capable of such a feat, so he did not want to give shelter to a liar. Perseus, to prove that he spoke the truth, removed Medusa's head from the bag. The hero displayed his trophy to the Titan. The latter, looking at the Gorgon, began to petrify. He became a huge mountain, whose peak supported the heavens. Perseus left the lands of Atlas behind, and fate would lead him toward an unexpected encounter. Days earlier, at the court of King Cepheus, his proud wife, Queen Cassiopeia, was boasting about her beauty and her beautiful daughter Andromeda. Without any reticence, she claimed that her daughter was more beautiful than the Nereids, the marine deities' daughters of Nereus, the old sea. Among the Nereids was Amphitrite, the queen of the oceans and wife of Poseidon, who was offended to learn that a mortal considered herself to be above her. Queen Cassiopeia's unreasonable pride caused her husband's kingdom to be punished by the god of the seas. At his wife's request, Poseidon pushed great waves against that kingdom, which seemed destined for destruction. But an oracle claimed that there was a way to placate the god's fury. To do this, the beautiful princess Andromeda was to be sacrificed. The princess was bound to a rock to be given as an offering to a sea monster known as Cetus. The princess was abandoned to her terrible fate. But, by the intervention of the Ladies of Fate, Perseus crossed the skies of that kingdom at that moment. The monstrous Cetus emerged from the depths to take his tribute, but Perseus was unwilling to allow that to happen. With the extermination of the monster, Andromeda was saved and Perseus broke the princess's chains. Cepheus and Cassiopeia gave the beautiful princess's hand to the hero. Perseus and Andromeda were married. The king gave Perseus a ship to complete his task, alongside his wife. The hero landed at his destination, to the surprise of all the citizens, as no one believed that the young man would return alive. During his absence, the king tried to force the hero's mother to marry him, but Danae resisted the king's approaches. She sought refuge in Athena's temple to avoid being raped. When Perseus heard about this, he was furious and went to the royal palace to settle accounts with the monarch. Polydectes was surrounded by guards, determined to kill Perseus. Perseus fought against the guards but realized that they were too many, and his victory would be impossible. So he took Medusa's head, petrifying all his opponents. The infamous King Polydectes was also petrified, and his cowardice was immortalized in his final pose. Dictys, the king's brother, was chosen to occupy the vacant throne and proved to be a just and benevolent king. Perseus's fame spread throughout Greece. Acrisius, the hero's biological father, fearing the prophecy that claimed his son would be responsible for his death, fled, fearing the young man's revenge. But Perseus did not want revenge. His fame allowed him to be welcomed anywhere. In a distant kingdom, he was invited to participate in the games in honor of the gods. Perseus threw the disc with extraordinary force, hitting the area where spectators were watching the games. The disc hit an elderly man in the head, killing him instantly. He was Acrisius, who could not avoid his fate. Perseus returned the shield to the goddess Athena and offered her the head of Medusa. The goddess of wisdom placed the Gorgon's head in her Aegis. Perseus then founded the glorious city of Mycenae, with his blood circulated in the veins of a glorious offspring. Among them, Hercules, the greatest of all heroes. The name of the man who exterminated the dangerous Gorgon became synonymous with heroism and courage, and his legend echoed for eternity. The stories of Greek mythology are full of great heroes, but none faced such difficult challenges as Hercules. His story began when Zeus, the supreme god of Olympus, fell in love again with a beautiful young mortal, Alcmene. She was married to Amphitryon, the king of Tiryns. Amphitryon had left with his army to fight in the city of Thebes, and Zeus took advantage of the king's absence to visit the queen. The god assumed the form of Amphitryon and united with Alcmene, who suspected nothing. Upon returning home from his military campaign, Amphitryon suspected his wife's infidelity and ordered her to be burned at the stake. But Zeus emerged and salvaged Alcmene. He revealed that he was the father of one of the babies the queen was expecting, for Alcmene was also pregnant with the king's child. Amphitryon felt honored to raise the child of the god of gods and forgave his wife. Zeus had great plans for the child. A prophecy said that the first great-grandson of the hero Perseus would be king of the glorious city of Mycenae. Alcmene was the hero's granddaughter, so her child would be entitled to the crown. However, her cousin was also pregnant. The goddess Hera was furious at her husband's infidelity and forced Eileithyia, the goddess of childbirth, to hasten the birth of Eurystheus. Due to the premature birth of his cousin, Hercules lost his right to the crown of the glorious city of Mycenae. After a difficult labor, Hercules and his brother Iphicles were finally given birth. The baby Hercules was vigorous, and there was no doubt as to which of them was the son of the Lord of the universe. Hera's jealousy became uncontrollable. Enraged, she sent 2 poisonous serpents to kill the babies. The serpents slithered into the cradle where Hercules and his brother were sleeping. Alcmene awoke, startled by Iphicles' cry, and found baby Hercules strangling a snake in each hand. Fearing further reprisals from the goddess, Alcmene took her son into the forest and abandoned him on a trail, hoping he would be picked up by someone. However, as fate would have it, 2 goddesses found the abandoned baby. They were Athena and Hera. Not knowing it was Hercules, the goddesses were impressed by the child's vigor. Athena blessed him with superior courage and cunning. Hera offered him her breast and suckled him with divine milk, food that would confer a power superior to almost all other demigods. Hercules sucked on Hera's breast with such force that, due to pain, she pushed the baby away, and a gush of divine milk tinged the heavens, giving birth to the Milky Way. Athena recognized the baby as her brother, and said she would return him to his mother. Hera, realizing the mistake she had made in nursing her rival's child, became even angrier and with an enormous desire for revenge. Upon hearing of Hercules' return to his home, the seer Tiresias said, "Let's celebrate the return of the child who will one day rid the world of all monsters, and by his great deeds secure a place in Olympus alongside his father." Hercules, the mighty son of Zeus, had shown signs of becoming a great hero since his youth, but fate would force him to overcome great challenges. Hercules was the subject of King Eurystheus, who was his cousin. He had only obtained the crown thanks to the goddess Hera, who did not want the bastard son of Zeus to inherit the crown. Hercules obeyed his cousin with frustration, but when the monarch decided to impose his first labors on him, the dismayed hero decided to consult the oracle at Delphi to find out whether he should continue to obey a man he considered inferior. The oracle told him that, with each labor he completed, the power usurped by Eurystheus would be diminished, and Hercules' glory would grow. Hercules, hoping that the oracle told him that he would not need to obey Eurystheus, was appalled. Taking advantage of the hero's vulnerability, the goddess Hera planted the seed of madness in his head. Hercules began to see the most terrible creatures and fought great battles with them, but it was all hallucinations. When he recovered from that wild madness, Hercules had blood on his hands, and his children and his wife Megara laid dead at his feet. Upon realizing what had happened, Hercules left for exile and went into a great depression in distant lands. Hercules was found by Theseus, a great admirer of the hero. He reached out his hand to raise the son of Zeus. Time healed the wounds of the mighty hero, and he decided to return to Mycenae to serve King Eurystheus. Therefore, he would cleanse himself of the horrific sins committed against his family. Hercules had made himself available to serve his cousin Eurystheus, king of Mycenae, but the king feared that his powerful cousin would try to take his throne in the future. So Eurystheus set him a seemingly impossible job. He was to annihilate a gigantic lion, which terrorized the forests of Argolis. The beast attacked the region's herds and, after devouring some men, began to enjoy human flesh. People said that the beast was the offspring of the monstrous Typhon and the evil Echidna. Therefore, it was rumored that its hide was indestructible to traditional weapons. Armed with bow and arrow, in addition to his powerful club, Hercules set out to hunt the creature. The hero spent some time in the forests of Nemea searching for the lion. Finally, he found tracks that led him to the cave where the monstrous feline was hiding. Hercules entered the monster's lair, which was filled with animal bones and human skulls. Deep in the cave, it was possible to hear the great beast's breathing. Hercules found the beast on a rock, and the animal let out a powerful roar that would make anyone tremble. But Hercules was no ordinary man, as the blood of Zeus flowed strongly in his veins. The demigod fired an arrow at the animal's head, but it bounced off the impenetrable hide. Furious, the gigantic lion leaped on Hercules to devour him. Hercules and the lion leapt against each other. The lion showed his powerful claws as the hero raised his club. Hercules struck the creature's head with a devastating blow. Despite the force, the lion resisted unharmed. Realizing that weapons were useless, Hercules and the lion fought hand to hand. The lion drove its claws into his opponent, who suffered the excruciating pain of his wounds. Hercules put his arms around the animal's neck and began a deadly stranglehold. The lion of Nemea could not withstand the hero's strength and perished. The strong lion was dead. Using the animal's claws, Hercules ripped off its hide and returned to Mycenae. Upon seeing Hercules approach, wearing the animal's skin, Eurystheus feared being killed and ran to hide inside a metal vat. Hercules concluded his first labor, taking an important step toward glory. As his second labor, Hercules was ordered by King Eurystheus to put an end to a creature that lived in the region of Lernaeus. This creature was a dreadful monster, son of Typhon and Echidna, known by the name Hydra. The brave hero was assisted by his nephew Iolaus, his companion since his youth. On the way, they stumbled upon a village razed to the ground by the creature, and a survivor pointed the way to the creature's lair. The Hydra inhabited Lerna's ominous swamp. Hercules and his nephew scoured the pestilent swamp for the beast's hiding place. The Hydra was entombed in a cave. Hercules used his bow to draw the creature out of its lair, firing flaming arrows into the cave. Then, the mighty Hydra appeared from the cave, enraged and thirsty to devour those who dared to interrupt its rest. The monster had multiple heads, and out of its gullets oozed deafening roars. Despite his large size, Hercules was remarkably agile and dodged the beast's attacks. With a powerful club blow, the hero smashed one of the beast's heads. To his surprise, 2 others quickly spawned in its place. With a sword, the angered hero started to chop off the Hydra's heads. Soon after, twice as many heads were born again. Iolaus shouted for Hercules to stop, as he was only making the task even more difficult. They came up with the idea of cauterizing the necks out of which the new heads were born. While Hercules cut off the heads, his nephew cauterized the wounds with a torch. One head after the other was defeated. The goddess Hera, Hercules' enemy, watching the hero defeating one more creature, sent crabs to help Hydra, but they only succeeded in distracting the hero for a short time and were eventually crushed. Hercules and Iolaus conquered the last head. Albeit severed, the creature was still alive. The hero threw it into a hole and buried it with a huge stone. The Hydra had exceedingly toxic blood. Aware of this, Hercules dipped his arrows in the monster's poisonous blood and was equipped with yet another terrific weapon. Hercules and Iolaus were set to return victorious to Mycenae. The goddess Hera honored the efforts of her minions, who had fought on her behalf, by registering them in the stars, creating the Cancer constellation. Hercules had previously defeated the Nemean Lion and the Hydra of Lerna. These were 2 very powerful opponents. Eurystheus' plan to finish Hercules' life was not working, and his rival was becoming more popular every day. Unable to defeat his cousin, Eurystheus came up with a great idea and assigned the hero 2 new jobs. Hercules was to bring back 2 creatures alive to Mycenae, the Erymanthian Boar and the Ceryneian Hind. The Ceryneian Hind was one of the wildest animals in existence. Capturing it would be almost impossible, and bringing back the mighty boar without killing it was even more unlikely. Eurystheus knew that Hercules would never return without the animals, because admitting failure was inconceivable for the hero. Hercules left, and the king was confident he would never see him again. More than a year had passed, without the hero ever finding the Ceryneian Hind. This was no ordinary hind. She was nothing short of splendid, with golden horns and iron hooves. The creature was one of the 5 holy hinds created by the goddess Artemis, but it was the only one that lived free, while the others served the goddess pulling her chariot. Hercules finally managed to get close to the hind and shot one of her legs with an arrow. Wounded, the hind could no longer run and was grabbed by the hero. The goddess Artemis showed up and questioned why the hero was committing such sacrilege. Hercules told her that, by order of the Oracle of Delphi, he was at the service of King Eurystheus. He would be freed after presenting the hind to the king. The goddess allowed Hercules to continue his journey. The hero would now try to capture the mighty Erymanthian Boar. The creature was extremely strong, so Hercules would have to use his wit to capture it. Hercules fought the boar, but its great strength prevented the hero from catching it. Since he couldn't kill it, he decided to just tire it out. The hero then chased the boar, leading it to an area where snow was piling up on the ground. The mighty boar had to make a huge effort to go through the high snow, and was ultimately overcome by fatigue. After the animal tumbled down exhausted, Hercules bound its legs and captured it. To everyone's shock, Hercules arrived at the palace of Mycenae, carrying the hind and the boar. Eurystheus, terrified at the sight of such a creature, again hid inside the bronze barrel. Hercules had now accomplished one more of his tasks. King Eurystheus of Mycenae was feeling frustrated at his inability to get rid of Hercules. The hero was piling up more glory with every labor he did. Therefore, the king decides to force Hercules to do a degrading job, unworthy for a son of Zeus. In one day, the hero had to clean the great stable of King Aegeus in Elis. The stable had not been cleaned for a long time and had accumulated tons of animal dung. Eurystheus thought that, aside from the task's difficulty, Hercules would refuse to perform such an indecent job. But the hero bowed humbly to his king's wish and set out for the kingdom of Aegeus. The need to be cleansed of his sins was more important than his pride. Hercules stood before King Aegeus and offered his services to clean the stables, but he didn't inform him that he was there at the service of King Eurystheus. Zeus's son bargained with Aegeus for payment for this work, and they reached an agreement. The king believed that cleaning the stable in just one day would be impossible, so he promised to deliver a tenth of his huge flock to the hero. If Hercules failed to complete the job in only one day, he would get nothing. The king called his son to testify to the agreement. Hercules was given a shovel, but he put it aside and headed towards the river Alpheus. With immense strength, Hercules threw large rocks into the river, diverting its course toward Aegeus's stable. The river waters went through the stable doors and washed away all the filth. Hercules then allowed the river to flow back into its natural course. King Aegeus, seeing that the stables were clean and Hercules hadn't even soiled his hands, was astonished. When Hercules went to collect his payment, the king claimed that he had never made such an agreement. But Phineus, his own son, asserted that he had witnessed the deal. Enraged by such treachery, the king expelled Hercules and his son. But Hercules would not take such humiliation. He gathered an army of Thebans and dethroned King Aegeus, installing the honorable Prince Phineus on his father's seat. Another one of his labors was now done. After cleaning out Aegeus's stables, Hercules had to go to Arcadia and finish off the Stymphalian, gigantic birds of prey that terrorized the area near Lake Stymphalia. After a long journey, the hero arrived at the lake. He was amazed by the sheer number of birds. These terrible birds had iron beaks and feathers. They attacked their victims by throwing their sharp metallic feathers. It seemed impossible to accomplish that task with brute force. So he tried to solve the situation with guile. Hercules asked his sister Athena for help, and the goddess of wisdom was decisive. The goddess offered him a musical iron instrument, made by the god Hephaestus in his sacred forge. With these divine drums, Hercules made a deafening noise that drove the birds away. Hercules even managed to shoot down a few birds in mid-flight with his bow and arrows, bathed in the blood of the Hydra. Hercules accomplished one more feat, and the hero then set off towards the island of Crete. Eurystheus ordered Hercules to go to the island of King Minos to capture and tame the fearsome bull of Crete. This was no ordinary bull. The animal was supposed to be sacrificed in honor of the god Poseidon. But, because of its qualities, Minos did not want to sacrifice it. Out of revenge, Poseidon caused the bull to feel an uncontrollable rage. Hercules faced the mighty bull, father of the terrible Minotaur. The bull was incredibly strong, and he contended with the hero. But the bovine beast was not strong enough to defeat Zeus's son. Hercules grabbed him by the horns and threw him to the ground. After tying him up, Hercules put the animal on a ship, heading for the Peloponnese. Upon arriving in Mycenae, the bull was presented to Eurystheus. The latter, after confirming that the task had been accomplished, released the animal. The bull roamed around Greece, causing terror wherever it went. On the plains of Marathon, he met yet another formidable opponent. His name was Theseus. Hercules was given his 8th labor. He had to travel to Thrace and bring with him the famous anthropophagous mares of Diomedes. The latter was the son of Ares, the god of war, and ruled over the Bistonians, a barbaric and cruel people. Diomedes would certainly be the cruelest of the Thracians. He captured the foreigners who entered his lands, taking them to the royal granary. That was the home of the mighty mares. They were so strong that they had to be tied with iron chains. The mares would not eat oats or other grains, for they had acquired a taste for human flesh. Diomedes used the visitors as a meal for his terrible equines. On the journey to Thrace, Hercules was joined by some friends, such as his nephew Iolaus, and also Abderus, son of Hermes. Upon arriving in Diomedes' kingdom, Hercules was informed of the atrocities the king was committing against visitors to the realm. Diomedes flouted the duty of hospitality, a demand from Zeus. Upon learning of the new visitors' arrival, the king and his guards ambushed the new victims. Hercules defeated the royal guard with relative ease. The hero wanted to punish the king for his many crimes. He grabbed the monarch and threw him out to be devoured by his mares. Properly fed, the mares calmed down, and Hercules led them to his ship. But more soldiers appeared, trying to avenge the king. Hercules asked Hermes' son to hold the mares, while the hero and Iolaus fought the soldiers. Once again, the guards were defeated by Hercules with ease. But, upon returning to the ship, Hercules found Abderus dead, being devoured by the mares. Hercules mourned his friend's death. After burying him, he declared that the city of Abdera would be founded there in tribute. In Mycenae, King Eusthreus consecrated mares in honor of the goddess Hera. The horses descended from these mares were extraordinary animals. According to legend, Bucephalus, Alexander the Great's horse, had the blood of these mares in its veins. Under Alexander the Great, it took part in the conquest of almost the entire known world. Hercules had gathered some heroes to follow him to Themyscira, the kingdom of the Amazons, to accomplish yet another task. The spoiled daughter of King Eurystheus demanded from her father Hippolyta's girdle as a gift. Hippolyta was the Amazonian queen, and, due to her achievements in the battlefield, received the girdle from the gods as an honor. To fulfill her daughter's desire, the king sent Hercules to use everything he deemed necessary to bring the girdle to his daughter. Themyscira was a women-only kingdom, and they were famous for being excellent warriors. When he arrived in the kingdom of the Amazons, Hercules was received by Hippolyta, who was stunned by the size of the son of Zeus. Hercules was diplomatic as he talked to the queen, and she retributed the courtesy. They seemed to be coming to an agreement, and Hippolyta would give her girdle to the hero without a drop of blood. But the goddess Hera, the enemy of Hercules, would not allow the bastard son of Zeus to accomplish that task so easily. Disguised, she joined the Amazons and spread the rumor that Hercules had planned to kidnap the queen. To protect Hippolyta, the Amazons armed themselves and attacked Hercules and his fellows. The battle was bloody. Many Amazonians fell on the battlefield. Among the fallen Amazons was the queen Hippolyta. Hercules picked her girdle up and started his return to Mycenae. On the way back, the hero passed through Troy, and the city was in terrible trouble. The Trojan king Laomedon was being punished, since he had refused to pay the tribute agreed with Poseidon, who had built the legendary walls of Troy for the king. And, because of that, his daughter was being delivered as a sacrifice to a terrible sea monster. The king promised a reward to the hero if he managed to save his daughter. So Hercules went to fight the creature. It was no match for the mighty son of Zeus and ended up destroyed. Laomedon increased his reputation as a deadbeat and failed to pay the prize to the hero. Hercules was expelled from Troy, but before leaving, he swore revenge and returned to Greece to deliver the girdle of Queen Hippolyta to the sovereign's daughter. King Eurystheus wanted to see Hercules as far away as possible. In the 10th labor, the hero was to steal the cattle of the giant Geryon. The giant lived on the mythical island of Erythea, near the Iberian Peninsula. The journey was very long, and no Greek had ever traveled so far and returned. Hercules sailed a long time until he reached a large mountain, which separated the Mediterranean Sea from the Atlantic Ocean. But not even a huge mountain could stop Zeus's son. Hercules used all his strength to split the mountain in two and pulled the halves apart. Thus, the hero connected the Mediterranean to the Atlantic and went on his way. The two great mountains created by the hero became known as the Pillars of Hercules. Today, this place is known as the Strait of Gibraltar. Finally, Hercules reached the island of Erythea. No Greek had ever dared to approach the oxen of the giant son of Chrysaor, for Geryon was a hideous creature that had several bodies in one. The giant also had a two-headed guard dog named Orthros, brother of Cerberus, the infernal dog. Hercules fought the dog, which, besides having two heads, had a serpent's tail. But not all this ferocity was an obstacle for Hercules. He slaughtered the dog son of Echidna with his mighty club. Hercules stealthily began driving the cattle without attracting the giant's attention. But Hercules' actions did not go unnoticed by Geryon, who attacked him furiously. The fight between Hercules and Geryon was intense, and the hero seemed finally defeated. Hercules realized that the goddess Hera, his enemy, was helping the giant by increasing his courage and strength. Hercules used his bow to shoot an arrow at the goddess. She, wounded, fled to Olympus. The demigod took one of his special arrows, soaked with Hydra's poisonous blood. Even the immortals were not immune to the strong poison of the monster son of Typhon and Echidna. The giant Geryon was slaughtered after undergoing terrible agony. Hercules was finally able to return to Greece, driving the famous Geryon's oxen. Hercules was again traveling the world to perform another labor for King Eurystheus. This time he was to find the famous garden of the Hesperides, bringing back one of their famous golden apples from it. When the goddess Hera married Zeus, she received from Gaia a beautiful tree from which golden apples grew. This tree was tended by the beautiful and delicate Hesperides and watched over by the huge dragon Ladon. In his quest into the garden, Hercules found the Titan Prometheus chained to a rock, his liver devoured by a great eagle. During the night, his liver regenerated. The next day, the bird would return to feed again. Prometheus had been punished by Zeus for stealing the sacred fire and giving it to men. Hercules decided that Prometheus had already suffered too much. Something had to be done. He shot down the hateful bird with his bow and broke the chains that bound the Titan to the rock. And Prometheus was finally free from his ordeal. As a form of gratitude, Prometheus advises Hercules not to face the mighty dragon. Instead, he should meet with Atlas. Continuing his journey, the hero met the mighty Titan Atlas, who was also suffering a punishment imposed by Zeus. Atlas had fought against Zeus during the Titanomachy, the great confrontation between gods and titans. The defeated Atlas was forced to bear the entire weight of the celestial sphere on his back for all eternity. The Titan was the Hesperides' father and offered to give Hercules the apples he needed, provided he would hold the celestial sphere while the Titan went to his daughter's garden. Hercules agreed and used all his strength to hold the heavy celestial dome on his shoulders. Atlas left and returned after a while. He was carrying with him the apples that Hercules needed. When he saw the hero, Atlas said, "Here are the apples, but I will deliver them to King Eurystheus myself for you." Hercules realized that he had been the victim of a trick, having to bear the weight of the world on his back for all eternity. At this moment, he uses his wit. "Would you do that for me? You are so kind. I'm sick of my cousin. But before you leave, I want to make a request. Can you support the vault just for a moment so that I can put on the lion skin cloak and protect my back? This is very uncomfortable, as you know." Atlas knew perfectly well the discomfort and decided to help the hero. When the Titan lifted the celestial vault again, Hercules picked up the apples that had been set on the ground and turned his back, never to return. Upon returning to Mycenae with the apples, the great hero was cheered by Eurystheus' subjects. The jealous king decided that there was only one way to get rid of Hercules for good. He should be sent to the realm of the dead. After completing 11 labors that everyone thought impossible, Hercules was beloved by the people, for the hero had rid the world of the most sinister creatures. Eurystheus, whose plan was to finish off Zeus's son, only made him even more glorious. The Mycenaean king could only demand one more labor from Hercules. It was his last chance to get rid of the hero. Eurystheus ordered Hercules to go to the underworld and bring with him the legendary Cerberus, Hades' three-headed dog, responsible for watching over his master's kingdom. Before leaving for the kingdom of Hades, the hero was initiated into the mysteries of Eleusis. The rituals of these cults symbolized death and resurrection. Hercules went to a secret cave that gave access to the underground world. At the entrance, he was met by his brother Hermes, the god who led souls to Hades' realm. Guided by the messenger god, Hercules entered the underworld. It was a sinister place filled with lugubriousness. In Hades' realm, the demigod found his friend Theseus still alive, chained to a rock. Theseus had been punished by Hades for trying, together with his friend Perseus, to kidnap Persephone, the queen of the underworld. Hercules freed his friend from captivity, and Theseus returned to the world of the living. Then Hercules met the boatman Charon, who refused to help Hercules enter his master's kingdom. But the demigod was determined and threatened to destroy Charon and the boat if he did not take him to the other bank of the river Acheron. Faced with such a threat, Charon had no choice and did as Hercules demanded. On the other bank of the river, Hades, the lord of the underworld, was waiting for him. The son of Zeus came face to face with Hades, the lord of the underworld. He asked his permission to take his dog and present it to Eurystheus, with the promise that he would return the animal after completing his work. Hades allowed Hercules to try to capture the three-headed dog, but he could only use his bear to subdue the animal. The hero went after the monster. Upon spotting it, Hercules realized that the beast, besides the three heads, had a serpent's tail. The son of Zeus had already fought every kind of creature and entered the fight without fear. The struggle between the demigod and the monster was intense, but Hercules managed to defeat the creature. The hero brought Cerberus to the surface. Upon contact with sunlight, the dog became nauseous and vomited. Poisonous plants sprouted from where the animal's barf fell. Despite resistance, Hercules dragged the animal to King Eurystheus' palace and presented the creature to the Lord. Faced with the monster, Eurystheus ran in terror into his bronze vat and hid there. Cerberus was released as promised and returned to the underworld. Hercules finally fulfilled his 12th labor. Eurystheus, resigned to the idea that he could not kill Hercules, eventually released the demigod from his duties. Hercules had reached the pinnacle of glory and was seen as mankind's benefactor. But this would not be the end of his journey. The son of Zeus still had difficult adventures and trials ahead of him before finally achieving immortality at his father's side. Aegeus was the king of the city of Athens. The monarch had several wives, but none gave him a male child as an heir. This made him feel sad and worried. The king decided to visit the Oracle of Delphi, the place where the Greeks found answers to the most diverse questions. He asked the Pythoness, a priestess of Apollo capable of predicting the future, what he needed to do to have a male child. As usual, the Pythoness's answer to Aegeus was very obscure and cryptic. The king could not decipher the meaning of what was said by the oracle. The king of Athens returned home disappointed, not to find the answer he was looking for. On his way home, Aegeus stayed at the palace of the wise king Perseus of Troezen, an old friend of the Athenian king. Aegeus told him the Pythoness's revelation, and the clever Perseus understood the prophecy immediately. He realized that Aegeus would have a child with the first woman he met on his way home. With this information, the king of Troezen intoxicated his guest and offered his daughter to sleep with Aegeus. Intoxicated by alcohol and lust at the sight of such a beautiful young woman, the Athenian could not resist his desires and gave himself over to his passions. That same night, Princess Aethra was visited by the goddess Athena's specter. The goddess said that Aethra should go to the beach and make an offering to the gods. Thus, the son she was expecting would be blessed by them. The princess stepped into the sea waters and made her offering to the gods. Poseidon, the god of the seas, emerged. This surprised the princess, who was amazed by the magnificent deity. Poseidon placed his hand on her belly and said that her child would achieve glories as great as those of Zeus's offspring. The god joined himself to the princess. The child born from Aethra's womb would be the son of Aegeus and Poseidon. The next day, Aethra told Aegeus about her meeting with the gods, and that they had blessed the child that would be born from the union. Obviously, she preferred not to reveal all the details. Aegeus was very pleased with the news, but he feared for the child's safety. The king had many enemies. If the child was a boy, she should not tell anyone who the father was. Aegeus lifted a large stone and placed his sandals and sword under it. When his son had the strength to lift the stone, the queen was to send him to Athens to be the prince of Attica. A beautiful, strong boy named Theseus was born. He was raised by his wise grandfather, who prepared him to be a hero. When Theseus was still a child, Hercules visited his grandfather's palace. When they heard that Hercules had arrived, little Theseus and his friends ran to meet him. Hercules had left his lion-skin cloak on an armchair. When they ran into the hall, the children were terrified because they thought it was a real lion. But young Theseus seemed to have no fear. He took the dagger from the palace guard and attacked the lion. Hercules had a great laugh as he watched the boy stab the lion's hide. He stated that, with such a heart, Perseus's grandson would be destined to have his name written in the stars. Hercules and Theseus would be great friends in the future, and together they would face many challenges. When he was 16 years old, Theseus decided to try to lift the stone where Aegeus had hidden his sandals and sword. With his immense strength, he lifted the stone with ease, finding his father's belongings. He put on the king's sandals and told his mother that he would leave for Athens. His grandfather gave him a ship to head for the port of Piraeus. But Theseus refused, saying that there would be no honor in arriving at his father's house without dust on his sandals and blood on the blade of his sword. He dismissed his grandfather's courtesy and hit the road toward his destination. After picking up his father's sandals and sword, Theseus headed on foot to Athens. The road was long and fraught with danger. The roads were full of bandits, and there were wild beasts on the loose in the fields and forests. But Theseus was not afraid. He set out alone on his way to meet the father he did not know. On the way, the young man met several bandits. Among them was Perseus, famous for his iron club. Theseus was attacked by the villain, but managed to dodge the strikes. After a powerful counterattack punch, Theseus disarmed and killed Perseus with his own club. Soon after, he encountered Ceryneian, who was challenging all the travelers to a melee without the use of weapons. Ceryneian killed all that he defeated. The young hero bravely faced his challenger. They measured forces, and Ceryneian proved to be very strong. Theseus used unprecedented fighting techniques to defeat Ceryneian. To this day, he is considered the inventor of Greco-Roman wrestling. After defeating other bandits, Theseus was attacked by a large boar, but not even Mother Nature's creatures could stop the stubborn boy. After wiping out the animal, the hero met Procrustes, the most feared figure in the region. He offered the hero a bed to rest in. Procrustes had 2 beds, one large and one small. When a tall visitor appeared, he offered the small bed. Since the man could not fit into the bed, he would cut off his legs to fit the bed perfectly. If the visitor was small, he offered the large bed. And for the visitor to fill the bed, he would pull the victim's legs and arms with ropes. But this bandit was no match for the hero. Theseus threw him into the small bed and made him taste his own poison. After this long journey, Theseus arrived in Athens. But even without having sent any message, his arrival did not surprise the old king Aegeus, who was already waiting for him. He had been warned days before by the sorceress Medea, who had predicted the arrival of the king's heir. But he did not learn the whole truth. The sorceress had gained much influence in Aegeus's court, and knew that her clout would be lost with Theseus's arrival. She warned the king that the arrival of the man would be responsible for the monarch's death. She told the king to welcome the visitor with all hospitality, offering him a glass of wine. In this way, all his problems were solved. The king offered the poison cup of wine to his guest. Theseus raised the cup and toasted the king's health. When he raised his arm, the king's sword became visible, and Aegeus recognized it immediately. Theseus was about to drink the wine, but the king knocked the goblet over. Then he embraced his son, who had finally come to stand beside his father. Aegeus expelled the sorceress Medea from his kingdom for conspiring against his son's life. The king introduced Theseus to the people of Athens and recognized him as the Prince of Attica and heir to the Athens throne. After returning to Athens and becoming heir to the Attica kingdom, Theseus encountered a revolting situation. Emissaries from King Minos of Crete had arrived in Athens for tributes owed to the monarch. Athens had been subdued by Crete after the war between the cities, prompted by the murder of Minos' son while he was visiting the kingdom of Aegeus. As a clause of the peace treaty, Athens was to send 14 youths to Crete annually to serve as tribute, 7 men and 7 women. Upon arrival in Crete, these young men and women were taken to the infamous labyrinth of Minos, where they were used as a sacrifice to the dreadful Minotaur, a creature half man, half bull. The Athenians could no longer bear to see their sons delivered as sacrificial lambs, but there was nothing they could do about it. However, on learning of the situation, Theseus decided to put a stop to it. He volunteered to be one of the young men delivered to Crete, saying that the time for humiliation had come to an end. He would leave with the other young men, and they would all return alive after exterminating the beast that fed on the blood of the Athenian children. King Aegeus tried to convince him to abandon this idea, but to no avail. Theseus, seeing his son leave, blessed him and told him that the ship that would take him to Crete would, by tradition, leave with black sails as a sign of mourning for the lives sacrificed. But if Theseus returned safely, he was to set white sails. That way, on seeing the boat on the horizon, the king's heart would immediately be put at ease. Distressed, Aegeus watched the ship carrying his son disappear over the horizon, not knowing if he would return. Upon reaching the island of Crete, the 14 young children were taken to the place of Minos to be presented to the king. While King Minos was examining the young men and women delivered as tribute, the beautiful princess Ariadne was also in the throne room. She, on seeing the handsome young man Theseus, fell in love immediately. During the night, Ariadne secretly visited the cell where the object of her passion was. Theseus was waiting for the moment when he would be taken to the labyrinth. She told him that Eros had struck her heart as soon as she saw Theseus, and she would not allow him to be killed by the infamous creature. She gave Theseus a sword and a ball of yarn. He thought the sword would allow him to put an end to the sinister creature that was taking the lives of his countrymen. But he did not understand the yarn ball's purpose. Ariadne told him that the sword would allow him to exterminate the monster, and the ball of yarn would show him the way out of the labyrinth. The next day, Ariadne and Theseus parted. As the hero set off in search of his destiny, she held the end of the yarn ball. Theseus entered the labyrinth with the other youngsters. As he walked, a yarn trail formed behind him. The labyrinth was dark and scary. The tension was high. Sometimes they could hear the snorts of the lurking creature. Blood stains stained the labyrinth's ground and walls, but the reckless Theseus believed his blood would not paint the soil red. The Minotaur emerged, and, with a surprise attack, tried to kill the hero. However, the agile Theseus dodged the beast's several blows. But the hero's counterattack was devastating. With just one sharp blow, Theseus rid the world of the nefarious creature. The young hero saved the lives of most of his fellow travelers. And, following the trail of the thread, they left the labyrinth. Ariadne greeted Theseus with eyes full of tears. Theseus and Ariadne kissed each other passionately, and they left together for the port, where the ship to escape from Crete awaited them. During the journey, the couple's love increased. During the night, Theseus received a visit from the god Dionysus, who demanded an end to the romance between the couple. Ariadne was destined to the god of wine. Out of respect for the gods, Theseus landed with Ariadne on the island of Naxos, and he abandoned her there. The desperate and poor princess saw her lover leave. But she would not be helpless, for she was destined for the god of ecstasy. The young man headed for Athens with a broken heart. Out of sadness brought on by the separation, Theseus forgot to hoist the white sails, as his father had requested. King Aegeus, who was eagerly awaiting the return of his beloved son, felt his heart tremble at the sight of the boat returning with the black sails. Aegeus jumped from the top of the cliffs into the waters, and a great sadness fell over Attica. The king's tomb sea was renamed the Aegean Sea. What should have been a triumphant return turned out to be a melancholy affair. But Attica praised Theseus. The young man killed the terrible Minotaur and was now the leader of Athens. Theseus became one of the most famous heroes of Greek mythology. His long reign is full of adventures and misfortunes. His achievements are inscribed in the stars. In the city of Corinth, the descendants of Sisyphus, the man who dared to deceive the gods, reigned over the city. King Glaucus had 2 sons, Diomedes, his favorite, and Bellerophon, who was so beautiful that people said he was Poseidon's son. The 2 brothers had a great rivalry, and almost always, whenever they trained their martial techniques, Bellerophon lost. But as he grew, Bellerophon became stronger and more agile, and their clashes got more violent. Despite improving every day, Diomedes was more skilled than Bellerophon. During the fights, he displayed exaggerated confidence, imprudently triggering his brother. Angered by his brother's provocations, Bellerophon started fighting furiously, forgetting his own fatigue. and he beat his brother with an unusual speed. One of his fast blows overcame Diomedes' defensive stance, and Bellerophon hit the prince's head with great violence. Diomedes fell to the ground, his body motionless. Bellerophon ran to help him, but the young prince's spirit had left for the kingdom of Hades. Bellerophon cried with his brother in his arms, while the king ran to see what had happened.
No! 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 What happened?
Fueled by the enormous pain of losing his favorite son, the king expelled Bellerophon from his kingdom and ordered him never to return.
It was an accident! We were training, and... It can't be! It can't be! Get out! Take that curse that you have shed on us! Out!
The young man left under the disapproving looks of his compatriots, who had much love for the dead prince. And so Bellerophon crossed the gates of the city, carrying on his shoulders the weight of guilt, and under the curse of a terrible sin. The young man wandered aimlessly through Greece, until he reached the city of Tiryns, ruled by King Proetus. When the monarch learned that the exiled prince of Corinth was in his lands, he offered him lodging and treated him with all respect and hospitality, obeying the principles of Zeus. Bellerophon told the king the reason for his banishment and swore that everything had been a terrible accident. The king was moved by the situation and promised to help him. Proetus organized a purification ritual to atone for the sins of the Corinthian prince.
You will be an honorary citizen of Tiryns. This is now your home. You will be forgiven by the gods. Let's make an offering to them.
With the sacrifices offered to the gods, Bellerophon's sins were purged, and the young man now owed a great debt of gratitude to the king. The queen of Tiryns felt mesmerized while contemplating the young man at the peak of his beauty. Bellerophon began to reside in the court of King Proetus, and did not realize the desire of Queen Antea. One day, Bellerophon was invited to a private meeting with the queen.
Your Highness, how can I help you?
The queen used her great beauty to try to seduce him. But out of respect and gratitude to his host, Bellerophon did not think of committing such treason and rejected the queen.
My apologies. I have a task to finish.
The queen audibly insulted the Prince of Corinth and questioned his manhood, but he ignored and left the woman on her knees. But the queen would not accept that humiliation and wanted revenge on the young man who had rejected her. Antea addressed the king, and with crocodile tears dropping from her eyes, denouncing Bellerophon's rape attempt. The king was taken by a huge fury, but due to the duty of hospitality required by Zeus, he could not attack his guest.
What a scoundrel! I open the doors of my kingdom to him. I will take care of it.
But Proetus was a wise man and devised a plan to get rid of the guest who had supposedly dishonored his home. The king ordered the scribe to write a letter to his father-in-law and delivered this sealed message to Bellerophon, asking him to give it to Iobates, the king of Lycia. Bellerophon naively accepted the task of his host, for whom he nurtured enormous gratitude, without suspecting that he had devised a way to kill him. Upon finding an entourage dressed in the colors of his son-in-law's kingdom, the king of Lycia ordered preparations to welcome the visitors. The king was deeply amicable to Bellerophon. After all, a friend of his son-in-law would also be his friend. The young man tried to deliver the message to the king, but he refused to check it before the young man knew Lycia's hospitality.
Welcome, young man. I come on behalf of King Proetus. He asked me to give you...
During a great feast, Iobates presented his beautiful daughter to the man from Corinth, who was immediately struck down by an Eros arrow. In an attempt to recover his composure, Bellerophon decided to deliver the message to the king. Iobates was stunned by its content. The letter said that the bearer of that document had attempted to rape the daughter of Lycia's king, and that he should get the punishment he deserved. Like his brother-in-law, the king began to feel hatred for Bellerophon. But even consumed by resentment, Iobates realized the interest of the young Bellerophon for his daughter. Lycia's monarch wanted to take that opportunity to get rid of his guest. The king said he would give his daughter's hand to the young prince if he helped him in a difficult task. Iobates explained to Bellerophon that his kingdom was suffering a terrible scourge. Villages were destroyed, plantations burned, and cattle perished. All this because of a terrible creature. The king promised to deliver his beautiful daughter to the hero in case he would rid Lycia's kingdom of this creature. Bellerophon, feeling an enormous sense of courage fed by passion, promptly accepted the challenge.
"That task is mine. I will put an end to this curse."
Bellerophon took up arms and left in search of the creature. Satisfied, Iobates saw the man, who supposedly tried to rape his eldest daughter, heading for a terrible death. The youngster had no idea that he would meet one of the most fearsome creatures that had ever passed through the earth. His name was Chimera. The monster descended from Typhon and Echidna, two of the most sinister creatures of the Greek world. This monster had a lion's head, a goat's head, and its tail was a terrible snake. The beast was a terribly aggressive animal. Nothing could resist his sharp claws, and his flaming breath burned everything around him. But before meeting this evil creature, the gods provided an unexpected encounter. Bellerophon found the magnificent winged horse Pegasus, son of Medusa and Poseidon, drinking water in a stream. He knew that if he could tame that creature, he would be practically invincible. The hero stealthily approached the winged horse and jumped on the animal, which reacted immediately, bouncing frantically. Pegasus threw the daring young man away. He fell to the ground and hit his head on a rock. Bellerophon became unconscious, and his mind entered the kingdom of Morpheus, the god of dreams. In his sleep, he came upon Athena, the goddess of wisdom, who had golden reins in her hands.
"Am I dreaming?"
Athena gave Bellerophon, for whom she felt great empathy, the special reins, and explained how to tame Pegasus. When the young man awoke, in his hands he had the goddess's divine reins, and Pegasus was still around. Following the goddess's guidance, Bellerophon calmly approached the glorious animal and gently put the reins on it.
"Easy, my friend. I will need your help."
The Prince of Corinth mounted the winged horse and began galloping. Bellerophon and the glorious creature took flight. Pegasus had never been mounted, but the union between the knight and the animal was so perfect that they pierced the clouds as if they were one single creature. At the top, Bellerophon noticed a huge column of smoke, indicating the presence of the terrible Chimera.
"Looks like we found the monster."
The bestial creature destroyed everything around him, and the flames consumed the village. Up there, Bellerophon was assessing his opponent. He was a more dangerous enemy than he had imagined. The beast spat gushes of fire against the hero, but the agile equine could anticipate the trajectory of those deadly attacks. Pegasus and Bellerophon flew in circles around the creature, which seemed to be increasingly confused. The hero attacked Chimera, and he prepared to fight back. The beast jumped on Pegasus, but the animal responded with a kick to the beast's head. Realizing that the monster was vulnerable, Bellerophon jumped off of his horse and pierced the beast with his spear. Chimera was dead, and after exterminating the beast, Bellerophon felt overwhelmed by an enormous sense of power. He began to believe the stories about him being Poseidon's son.
"This damned demon required a great effort.
I was blessed in this fight, and now I will take the trophy to prove my worth." Bellerophon returned to the palace of Iobates with the monster's head as a trophy. The king was impressed. He never imagined that that boy would be able to complete the task successfully.
"How in the hell did... I mean, he's dead."
The king told Bellerophon that he would prepare the wedding as soon as two other threats were neutralized: the Solymi and the Amazons.
"Unfortunately, I have two other tasks before I grant my daughter's hand."
Bellerophon knew that the king was infringing on what had been agreed, but due to his passion for the princess, he accepted these new tasks. Bellerophon fought and defeated the Solami, the wild warriors and the offspring of Ares. The Amazons also failed to defeat the powerful warrior and his divine horse. Bellerophon returned to Lycia, taking as prisoners the leaders of the looters who terrorized their kingdom.
Here they are. What else do I have to do to prove my worth?
Iobates realized that that man was blessed by the gods, and that the accusations made against him could only be unfounded.
This guy is invincible.
As promised, the king of Lycia celebrated Bellerophon's marriage to Princess Philonoe and named the hero as his heir. Bellerophon had conquered everything a man could desire. He had a beautiful family and ruled Lycia in her father-in-law's place. But after all of his accomplishments, he believed he deserved a much greater glory. In an impulsive act, he rode Pegasus and flew to Olympus. Bellerophon guided his winged horse towards the skies. Conquered by pride, he wanted Olympus because he thought it was right to have a place next to the gods. At Olympus, Zeus observed the daring and unbridled pride of that man, who considered himself part of the immortal gods. That display of arrogance was considered a grave sin, known as hubris.
How senseless! How can he dare? I believe one wasp will be beaten by another.
The supreme god made a wasp sting Bellerophon's horse. Bellerophon fell from the heavens, and his desire for immortality vanished among the clouds. A mortal would never survive such a great fall. Some say that Bellerophon died a terrible death. Others say he was saved by the goddess Athena and spent the rest of his life trying to find his winged horse again. But regardless of the fate of the proud hero, he never met Pegasus again, as the horse became immortal by the will of the gods and was placed among the stars.